Alright, first basket. You want to play like this. I've never wanted to punch Agito as much as I do in this week's episode of Fruits Basket. That Yuki flashback and just having Yuki narrate probably one of the darkest memories I can recall seeing in this anime was phenomenally done, but Agito. I'm not going to say I want you dead. I refuse to go down that mindset because Fruits Basket isn't directing the series to be about revenge, but rather forgiveness. But that infuriated me, but at the same time, it does feel like there is a hopeful outcome and that is going to end in total despair, probably also for Agito as well. This series is remarkable, and something that actually caught me off guard was something that I think I've had a lot of commenters not spoil me on, but basically said, hey, you know, we're not going to spoil you, but it seems like you got something pretty accurate for someone who's never read the manga, and I think that's the whole idea that Yuki views Tohru as a mother figure, because I've been saying that for a long time since season 1. It kind of felt like that's what they were building up to. At the beginning, I thought it was clearly a love triangle. You had Yuki, Tohru, and then of course you had Kyo. But over time, it felt more like the romance side was for Kyo and Tohru, where it felt more like Yuki craved a motherly love because clearly he never had that. But I really didn't believe in that theory 100%. I was confident, but I wasn't like 100% confident in it. And I do remember there's been quite a few times around the points where I talked about that I recall having people say like, you know, you touched upon something that I'm not going to spoil you on, but that seems very like spot on. And I honestly had no idea what people were talking about, but I think this is one of those moments. And if you were some of those people from back in the day who commented like that, let me know if this was one of the moments, because that's what kind of caught me off guard, is because I was ready to once again bring up the whole motherly thing, because I thought it was going to end just him saying like he craves Tohru, and then it would bring up the whole love triangle dilemma that people always talk about, but then they end the episode with how he craves her as a mother, and I'm like, okay, apparently I was pretty spot on with that, which I know kind of patting yourself on the back for theories and speculations can be a little arrogant, but honestly, I'm proud of that because I put a lot of focus into Fruits Basket, and it's nice to see that even as someone who's never experienced the manga, the stories and the layers are there since day one, so you can pick up on them if you really take the time to analyze and dissect it. So it's not like you need to read the manga in order to see the deeper themes, because clearly as someone who's never read the manga, this is how well it's written. It's absolutely phenomenal, and they're doing a remarkable job. And once again, this episode highlights just how good the portrayal of domestic abuse and suicidal tendencies and just all these darker undertones are really handled with grace. Because rather than just beating Yuki into a bloody pulp, there was a couple of physical abuses in this episode, don't get me wrong, and they made me clench up and just feel just as scared and frightened as he was. But at the end of the day, the thing that made it so painful was the words. And that can be some of the words where people who are supposed to protect you and take care of you just belittle you and berate you and just make you believe in the words that they are saying. Of course, when you have characters like Tohru, it's going to take a long time for them to overcome that trauma. And Fruits Basket has done such a remarkable job at saying, hey, we're going to show you things over time, but even if you don't know the full picture, you understand that these people are abused and afraid of the head of the family, that being Akito. And you really get a sense of why they are so fearful, and especially with Yuki in this episode, you get a great understanding that for so long, a sickly boy abandoned by his mother and father, apparently for a profit, and the person that took care of him eventually had a mood swing shift that turned them into a alright person, but not really great to be around, to someone who's a complete sociopath who tells you about how you're going to die and how no one loves you and how you're sickly and frail and you are worth nothing. And it gets to the point where you feel like, if I was gone from this world, would people be better off? They were able to introduce such serious themes in this episode that even went above and beyond what we're typically used to seeing in Fruits Basket, and it made me feel completely sunken in depression. Fruits Basket is definitely a very depressing series, but is also a very optimistic one, and the thing that really got me with this episode is that they really once again portrayed how sad this series can be, while sprinkling in a brighter tomorrow once again with the uses of sunrises and sunsets, really getting the mood lighting out there to really make you feel a wave of emotions, like when things were getting bad, they were really dimly lighting everything, and it felt like a horror film. But then when you see characters like Tohru at a young age, or Tohru's mother who was going all in on those cops explaining how to find Tohru, the cute girl, didn't need anything else, just the cute girl, it was a more bright and almost hopeful scene, as if there was potential to do something better. I really like how Fruits Basket, since episode 1 of season 1, has always used lighting to tell the story alongside the voices and the dialogue and just the story overall, because that's honestly, I think, Fruits Basket's biggest visual strength. It's not the crisp character models, it's not the gorgeous and honestly highly detailed background, it's the lighting. Lighting can often go overlooked in anime, and I honestly think most anime have solid lighting direction overall. I don't think there's a lot of anime with bad lighting. It's just a matter of, do they go above and beyond, or do they just kind of match the scene at hand? But Fruits Basket, to me, goes above and beyond. This episode was a mixture of just pitch black, and as the story was saying about how Yuki is pretty much pitch black, he's worth nothing. That was what was being basically brought into his mind since day one, or at least day one since Akito kind of lost his marbles. At the end of the day, though, it's really nice to see that this is something that it uses everything that the anime medium has to offer in order to enhance the already masterpiece of a manga. I may not have read it, but it's clear as day if people are telling me that this is a faithful adaptation, that the manga is a classic for a reason, and why a studio was willing and a production community funded an entire anime adaptation that would run over 3 anime seasons, like probably 70 or 60 some odd episodes. It's great to see that they're really highlighting just how characters got to the point they got to, but also showing you that it isn't impossible for them to overcome it. The idea of parents in this series has always been a very relevant theme, and it has someone like Tohru who's always been a motherly figure, and how they almost made you think at the early stages that it was going to be a love triangle, that everyone's going to love Tohru, but at the end of the day, it almost feels like only one person loves her, that being Kyo, where the others almost like latch onto her as a sister, a big sister, or a motherly figure, because they don't have that in their life because of how the head of the family operates. And it's great to see that Yuki, something that I really felt for a long time, but I wasn't 100% sure until this episode, is that Yuki really wants to be friends with Kyo. They've always had this kind of like frenemies vibe, but in this episode, he clearly says like that's one of the biggest things he wants, is to be friends with him, because he kind of looked at him almost at a young age saying like, hey, you know, this is something that's going to really be something important to me. This is something that, hey, if I feel alone, you have the cat, he's alone, he's always looking in, feeling like he can't do anything. It's like, okay, well, maybe this is someone I can associate with, maybe someone I can relate to and things like that. But then you end up getting something that just felt like it was so hostile, as if he was just trying to attack him and like berate him. But at the end of the day, you can't blame Kyo, because of, if you know anything about the Chinese zodiacs and how like the ox is someone who kind of resents the rat for riding on his back and things like that, not being able to get a higher place in the hierarchy. The cat being left out, almost, again, I mean, cats and rats, they don't usually mingle and things like that. So it's nice to see how characters just got this like first impressions and viewed him as like the favorite, so they kept away from him, and then there's just like this hatred, and it just feels like the way the hierarchy and the family is structured is like, oh, of course, people aren't going to associate with him because of his status, but really he's one of the loneliest of them all. And I think it really makes you appreciate Tohru's kind of role in this series all the more, but also hoping that she doesn't get lost in despair, as the previous episode indicated, where you saw at the end of the episode her looking almost similar to Akito in this episode. You know she's not going to go down that road, but at the same time, loneliness is a very important theme in this series. Family is something that drives this series, as well as the despair, and it's almost like a balance of which one's going to win, the loving family or the despair with Akito. But it does feel like Fruits Basket is a series about forgiveness, and I think there is potential for forgiveness to happen to all these characters, and hopefully they'll be able to come together and break this curse that seems impossible as of right now. This was impactful, it was emotional, it was heartbreaking, but it also feels optimistic, and it's nice to have some conclusion with the hat and seeing how everything relates and things like that, because there was definitely some mystery about how Kyo, as well as Yuki, as well as Tohru, all relate to that hat, so it's nice to see getting some confirmation and seeing how it all ties together, one of those mysteries kind of finally coming full circle, while still having some others in the back of our mind. I'm hoping things work out for everyone, but it's Fruits Basket, you never know what you're gonna get. As always, let me know your thoughts and feelings down below. Did you love it? Did you hate your favorite moment? And where do you think it's gonna go next week? If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like to show your support, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you happen new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.